Welcome to Teaching Truth. In his book Everyday Supernatural, Mike Pilavachi shares of an experience which he encountered where, as a result of his stepping out, the waters, as it were, parted and people were blessed. Let me share that story with you. Mike writes these words. About 4 years ago, I sensed God challenging me to step out of my comfort zone and to choose to obey him when I didn't completely understand what he was telling me to do. On one occasion at our Momentum event for 20s and 30s, I felt God speak to me during the worship. I was shocked at what came into my head. There is someone here who is having an affair with a pastor in their church. Everything in me recoiled in that word. There is no way I'm saying that, I said to myself. It goes against all our rules. It's a negative word, and anyway, how am I supposed to invite that person to come forward in front of 6,000 people? I was on my way to overruling God when I remembered my promise, and also the Lord said to me, it's not my judgment, Mike, it's my mercy. I wanted to weep for a moment as he opened a window in my heart to sense something of his compassion for this person. My responsibility was to be obedient in giving the word, but also to work out how to do it in a way that was pastorally sensitive. I gave the message and then said, if that's you, please come and see my friend Ali at any time during the meeting, or go to one of our counsellors tomorrow. We would love to pray for you that God would heal you and set you free. At the end of the meeting, a young lady came up to Ali in floods of tears. She said she had been having an affair with the youth pastor in her church, who was married with 3 children, and she didn't know how to stop. As she was driving to Momentum, she said to God, I'm too ashamed to tell anyone about this. Lord, if you want this relationship to end, you're going to have to tell someone on the stage about it, because I can't tell anyone. Members of our team prayed for her, and she repented and stopped the relationship and went through a process of healing and restoration. Mike goes on to write these words. When I heard about this, I was astounded. I came within an inch of not saying anything. If I had kept my mouth shut, she would have missed the blessing. And the point that Mike goes on to make is this, that the waters, as it were, only parted as Mike was obedient in giving that word, in taking that step of faith. And as a result of his doing so, that young lady was not only helped, restored, healed, but blessed as a result. Moses could well have had felt when he came to the Red Sea that God was challenging him to step out of his comfort zone and to choose to obey him when he didn't completely understand what God was telling him to do. Moses could well have come within an inch of not stepping out. But Moses took that step. That step that we read of in the passage that we're going to open and read together just now from Exodus chapter 14, from verse 19 through to verse 22. This is the part of the story where the Israelites cross the Red Sea. Then the angel of the Lord, who had been travelling in front of Israel's army, withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Those pillars represented the presence of God, and therefore God himself, as it were, was putting himself as that barrier between the Egyptians and the Israelites. God was going to be their protector. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to the one side and light to the other, so neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back. The Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. It was only as Moses stretched out his hand over the sea that the waters were divided. Moses had to take, as it were, that step of faith, that step of obedience by raising his hand and trusting God in that moment that the waters would divide. There would be that division which would then enable the Israelites to cross on dry land. And the takeaway challenge for us today is this. It could well be that we will come within an inch of not doing anything, of not, as it were, raising our hand enabled by God. It may well be that we will come within an inch of not taking that physical step, as it were, into our Red Sea situation. It's only and often as we take that step do the rivers, do the waters, does the sea part. And it's been my experience, particularly within the last sweep of a year, but it's only as we take that step of obedience and faith, only in that moment does God then open up what our Red Sea situation is. And what we thought impossible, what we thought was a barrier, then becomes possible and ceases to become a barrier anymore. Today, take that step of obedience. Take that step of faith. Don't come within an inch and not do anything. God invites you and I, as he did Moses, to raise his hand and to take that step into whatever our Red Sea situation is. And it's only when we do that will we see the seas part and God's provision and God's faithfulness. Take the step.